Welcome back guys to Web Dev Mobile Dev, and in this third tutorial on our full course on HTML and CSS for beginners, we are going to be dissecting some websites to give you an overview of how the three main technologies HTML, CSS and JavaScript work together. This video is going to basically explain to you how we are going to gradually progress from building simple websites using HTML and CSS to very interactive websites with amazing CSS and JavaScript. So stay tuned. Every website or web application is powered by three main technologies: HTML, CSS and JavaScript. This tutorial series has a focus on these two technologies, HTML, CSS, and the next tutorial series we are going to have is going to be a tutorial series on JavaScript. For a website to provide a very attractive user interface and to provide the best user experience, also known as UX, is going to need to combine these three technologies very well. So the question now is, how do these technologies come together and how do they affect a website? That's what we're going to be seeing in the next slide. So what's the role HTML, CSS and JavaScript play on a website? We have to know that all the elements on a web page, all the text we see, the images, the buttons, the icons, these are all HTML elements present on the website. CSS is going to come in now to style these elements we see on the website. The text colors, the text styles, the background colors, the element positions, the element border and shapes, all these are styles applied by CSS. So let's take a look at some websites and see how HTML and CSS function on these websites, the role they play on these websites. So we'll go ahead and look at some websites to see how HTML and CSS take effect on a website. If we take a look at this first website, which is one of the first websites ever created, you notice that the elements on this website are all HTML elements. All the text we see on this website are HTML elements. But we'll notice the default flow is that all text is placed vertically, that's line after line, and that's how HTML is by default. If you go to the next page of this website, we'll notice that it's the same way, just text, and the text is being placed vertically, that's line after line. Going through all the links of this website is the same thing, and we see that there is no styling applied to this website, and that's just how HTML is. Coming to this next website, Wikipedia just adds some little CSS to the website. We'll notice that the difference between these two websites, first of all, is the positioning of the elements. This second website, this Wikipedia site, you have elements placed to the left, this site navigation at the left, we have in navigation at the top, we have this other content to the right, and we have the content at the center. So that's CSS in place. CSS permits us lay out these elements in a different way compared to the previous website that was just pure HTML with no CSS. We notice that this website also has some small background color on this site navigation, some small background color on this header, and that's also the work of CSS. CSS permits us style the website a bit better as compared to this first website. If we move to the third website, which is a bit more advanced, it shows you clearly what CSS can do on a website and make the website look very attractive. So the first thing we notice is that some text stands out on this website. This text standing out as compared to this other text is the work of CSS. CSS can permit us increase the font size of text on the website. We notice this button with rounded corners, that's the work of CSS. HTML is going to permit us place all these text, this button, this text, these icons on the website. But HTML cannot style the elements on the website, meaning if you place these elements on the website using HTML, it's just going to look like this previous website with all the elements being placed vertically from top to bottom. You cannot position the elements horizontally or give them rounded corners or borders. CSS is going to help us style the elements a lot better, give them a border radius, give them some color. When the cursor comes to this button, you notice that the background color changes to white. That's the work of CSS. If you take a look at these two sections, this section has a blue background color, while this one has a white background color. That's CSS in action. We also take a look at these icons and the text there. Notice that these icons are placed horizontally. CSS can permit also to position elements well on the website. It's almost the same thing that this side looks like. You see that elements can be positioned to the left, the center, and the right. That's similarly what's happening here. Positioning of elements on the website is done by CSS. This hover effect is also an effect of CSS. You notice that once the cursor comes to this section, it becomes a gray color, and that's CSS in effect. So with that, we'll see how HTML and CSS differ. The fact that HTML is all the elements you see on the website, and CSS is the positioning and the styles applied to these elements. So we are just from seeing how HTML and CSS can take effect on the website. And the next thing we need to look at is how JavaScript takes effect on the website. So JavaScript is all the interactivity and advanced computations on the website. Things like the search features on the website, form validation, data manipulation, data fetching from a backend, front-end programming, and all features of JavaScript on the website. So let's take a look at another website and see how JavaScript takes effect on websites. So if we go to the email field, let's enter some information. So they require us to enter an email on this website. Notice that so far what I've entered does not contain the @ symbol. This @ symbol is required for an email, and it's just natural. So JavaScript is going to analyze what I've entered in this field and tell us that we need to enter the @ symbol. So that's JavaScript behind the scene. If we come to the password, for example, and we need to enter a valid password, you notice that the password, this is the information we need to enter for the password. It tells that it needs to contain at least one lowercase letter. So far I've entered a letter and it's a lowercase letter, so that field is valid. We need to enter at least 6 characters, and if I enter 6, you see that at least 6 characters, that field is valid. We need now to have at least an uppercase letter. If I enter an uppercase letter, it's tick. The next one, it has to contain at least a number. I enter a number. Sorry, what I just entered was a special character, and that's why the one on the special character is okay. And if now I enter a number, it's going to be okay. So you notice that JavaScript is going to analyze all what we enter in this field, and it's going to judge to validate the field based on what we have entered. And that's JavaScript behind it, which is actually like the programming aspect of the front end. Let's take a look at another functionality of how JavaScript is going to function on the website. Still on this very website, if we go to the marketplace, if I remember, the marketplace, you notice that all the different cards here are cards on this website which have been searched from the database. So if you want to filter these cards based on a condition, for example, if we choose business and we click on the search, JavaScript is going to search the database based on the category what we just entered, and it's going to show only cards that correspond to that. If we also do business, let's take development, and we do a search, you notice that only one card is returned in this case. It's because only one card belongs to the category development. So that's JavaScript. Let's take a look at another functionality. Let's take a look at a search functionality of JavaScript. If we want to search this website, let's type maybe Samsung. You notice that JavaScript is already filtering the database. Immediately you enter a letter, it starts searching the database for all items that start with S. So that's actually JavaScript in action. Let's take a look at another website to see how JavaScript functions. If we go to this other website, notice that immediately you land on the website, items are scrolling automatically, and that's JavaScript doing the automatic scrolling. Still on this other section of the website, decline. Still on this other section of the website, you notice that this is a carousel, and this carousel items change automatically. They can as well change when you click on this arrow, and this is a JavaScript functionality. Let's take a look at some other applications of JavaScript so that you better understand. if we go to the explore section of this website, so this is a map to the right of the screen. Notice that I can zoom in and I can zoom in and I can zoom out. This is JavaScript in action. It's only JavaScript which can permit us carry out such an action on a website. We can also hover on these items, on these different images. We can see the location, the exact location on the website based on where I hover. So that's JavaScript in action. So you notice that all the computational aspects, like the more technical things on a website, are all JavaScript functionalities. Like the programming part of a website is JavaScript. And that's why I decided to separate JavaScript into its own separate tutorial series, because JavaScript is more of programming, and before we reach JavaScript, you need to first of all know how to lay out the items on a website. You need to know how to make a website look like this, with all the images, the text, and everything, before you start thinking of including now the functionality on a website. You need to know how to first of all develop the website with just the basic look of the website. So in this tutorial series, we are going to be studying HTML, but take note that we also need to, in addition to just the text, images, buttons, and icons, and all the elements on the page, HTML also has HTML5, and HTML5, as we saw in our previous tutorial, which I'm going to show the link in the card above. That tutorial explains what HTML5 brings to the table, and HTML5 brings more features to HTML. So you can look at the video on HTML5 in the card above. We're also going to take a look at CSS, but not just basic CSS. We're also going to look at CSS-TV. CSS-TV brings more features to the plate. So that's what we're also going to have in this tutorial series on HTML and CSS for beginners. Our next tutorial series on JavaScript is not just going to be simply JavaScript. We're also going to look at all the ES future updates to JavaScript. So JavaScript has evolved over the years with new ES features, ES version 6, 7, 8, and presently we're actually at version 12. So a summary of this video, we took a look at the three languages of the web, which were HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we explained how they affect UI and UX of a website. We took a look at the role they each play on a website, with HTML being just the elements, buttons, icons, everything we see on a website, but CSS helping us to style them and position them at different locations on the website. We saw how JavaScript was the programming aspect, and the more complex functionalities on the website were all JavaScript driven. We also took a look at them by showing how they actually took effect on websites by browsing through different websites. So thanks for watching, and if you know you got value from this tutorial, I would like you to consider subscribing to this channel for more tutorials like this. That encourages me to release more tutorials, and I would like to have you in the next tutorial where we actually start programming HTML.